Hi, welcome back to HR Ninja Chronicles. My name is Tanisha Smith, and I'm your HR expert. Today, I'm going to go over 5 mistakes that employers make when they don't hire an expert like me. All right, here we go. Let's get into it. Number one is misclassifying employees and contractors. Hiring contractors to avoid payroll taxes is one of the things that is the most important thing. You don't want to do that. You want to avoid doing that. But that's typically not why people misclassify employees. So I'll just say one of the things you want to do is make sure you go through the ABC testing. And I'm going to actually just kind of read those off but in a few minutes. But ABC testing will help you kind of define whether or not the person is really a true contractor or if they should be an employee. ABC testing comes down to in California is 3 different stages in which the employee has to meet these in order to be classified as a contractor. So the worker has to be free from the company's control, direction in performing the work. The worker is outside the work that's being done is outside of the usual course of company's business, and then the worker is engaged in an independent established trade, occupation, or business. Let me explain. I read that to you, but let me explain. To make sure that you're not classifying someone wrong, making sure when they're coming into the work that they're not giving direction on each and every step that they're doing. This could be also a manager, supervisor, and things like that. So you want to be careful not to classify them just at that point. Keep on going reading. The second one talks about the work has to be outside of the company's normal business duties. So this is a lot of times that I be make this simple. A trainer that comes into your organization and trains on certain things, as so long as they're not just focused on your company and goes into the three and making sure they are operating independently. So, like an independent contractor company that comes in, a vendor that comes in, that person can be a contractor or a vendor, but not necessarily an employee. So, if the person meets all 3 of those things, you can classify them as a contractor. One of the things that I would recommend too is looking at that job description and making sure it does not exactly match someone else that's working within the organization, because that also is a flag right there. Okay. Number 2 is skipping offer letters or documentation. And so, what we want to do, especially with hourly employees, is making sure we have documentation on how much we plan to offer the person per hour. And if we end up giving them a raise, we want to make sure we document that as well and make sure we provide that to them. We never want there be any questions later on how much a person's supposed to be paid, what status they are, whether they're part time, whether they're full time, how much they're going to be paid. That shouldn't be a question later on. Rather, it should be all in writing. So, a lot of today, what I'll talk about is documentation, document. So, that's what we have to say on skipping offer letters and documentation. We don't want any disputes later on. The next one is not tracking or paying overtime correctly. So, this is another one that has to do a lot with part time or full time employees, but really hourly employees is the main one. We want to make sure we're tracking hourly employees' time. So, having them fill out a time card, making sure they are signing or some kind of stamping there that is their time card. So, if you have a time card system or if they're filling out their time card, making sure they sign that and saying how much they got paid, how much they work, excuse me. And then also making sure that they're taking their breaks when they're supposed to be taking their breaks. So if they're not taking their breaks and lunches before the due time and when they're supposed to, per your policy, which is the California policy, making sure they take a lunch or break within 30 minutes, excuse me, at least 30 minutes from the start of their work period and they're working over 6 hours. I'm mumbling over. I'm not going to even edit this, but here's what we're going to say. Making sure they take their first lunch break before the 6 hours begins if they're working a full time at least or more than 6 hours. So making sure they take that and they document that. Oftentimes I have employers reach out to me and say, I have asked my employees to take their breaks on time. I'm still looking at their time cards and it doesn't look like they're taking their lunches on time. They're clocking lunches in at 6.5 hours, 7 hours, and they're working a full work day, 8 hours. What do we do? That comes down to a disciplinary, let's start with a conversation, but then up to a disciplinary action if we have to take an action in that if a person is just not adhering to the policies and rules that they've been told over and over again. So that's something to deal with on the back end for sure. And I hear it all the time. So the next one is going to be ignoring leave laws. And so, what we want to do is someone comes to you and they say they are going to take a leave of absence. Let's make sure we pay attention to that right away. We make sure to take action right away. We let them know what their rights are to take vacation. So, depending on the size of your company, that's a whole nother conversation that we could have too. But let's focus on like California, for instance. There's a lot of leaves: California Family Rights Leave, the paid family leave, and pregnancy disability. We want to make sure if someone comes to you with any of those types of leaves, we are taking action right away, making sure we get their documentation and, again, letting them know if they are approved for the leave, if they're denied for the leave, why or why not, and being very clear what is their leave expectations while they're gone, what are they going to receive while they're gone, whether it's additional pay, whether there's no pay from the company and just from the state, and what's going to happen with their benefits while they're on leave of absence. So we want to make sure to pay attention to all those things as well. Okay, make sure it's in writing. And then terminating without a process. This is one of the things that it does not seem like you don't need to have a formal process. We just need to make sure we're doing all the right things when it comes to the law. So making sure we pay the person who leaves the company on the last day of their pay. If we are terminating them, if it's a layoff, if they're being fired, we're making sure that final check is in their hand or in direct deposited, and we can prove that. Making sure that's done before they're on their last day. Excuse me. Also, making sure if the person ends up resigning, we also have, and they give you at least 72 hours, we still should have their final check in their hand or in their direct deposit on their final day. If they leave immediately, if they resign and say effective immediately, we have 72 hours to get them their final check. This is California again. I'm focused on California. This is another California rule. Other states have different laws and rules, such as making sure their check is paid to them on the regular payday. Texas was one of those, but I want to make sure that we are remembering to get people paid on that final day. Sometimes it's last minute, especially if we have to terminate someone for cause and they've done something. If you have to get a check written in-house and then reconcile that later on, just make sure you get that taken care of. So there we go. There's your 5. I mumbled through this, but I told myself I'm not going to overthink this. I've been in HR for a long time. I have a lot of conversations, so I'm going to just start doing this as organically as I can. And it feels good to do it this way. So here you go. Thank you for watching. Till next time.